Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the NuclearRevenge subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Alright, on to today's stories, let's jump right in. This story with update comes to us from Erin no Guchu? I don't know what that is. Aunt broke my model kit, so I took away her everything. This whole thing started exactly a year ago, but just ended, and a friend told me to post here, so off we go. I live in Turkey, and as you know, southeast of my country was wrecked by a couple of giant earthquakes a year ago. My city was the epicenter, and while the house I lived in with my family wasn't destroyed, a lot of shelves got knocked off, and one of them was the one where I held my gunpla kits. Out of all the kits I had, only one survived, a MG-DO that was heavily customized. I had built it with my grandfather who passed away a few years ago, so I was ecstatic it survived. A few months after everything had calmed down, my mother called her relatives for dinner, which included Aunt B. Not for bitch, her name does start with the letter B. She came alongside her son, which is 8, and is an entitled brat. While the adults were drinking coffee, this little brat barged in my room and demanded to play with my computer, which I refused since I was editing a video for my college society and had the camera on. Well, the brat went back crying to her mother, who came and started yelling at me. While I was dealing with her, the little brat climbed my desk and took my model kit, then immediately dropped it and stepped on it. Rest is just yelling, me swearing them up and down, and telling them they were going to pay for it, with her calling me a weirdo for still having toys, and that she wasn't going to pay for crap. My mother was at first a bit not into making her pay to keep the peace, but when she realized it was the kit I made with my late grandfather, her father, she was angrier than I was and went out for blood. We took the case to a friend of ours who is a lawyer that specializes with in-family cases, and they told us since my camera caught it all, we would definitely win, but it was better to come to an agreement out of court in a settlement since it would be cheaper. I pulled out a price list of the kits I needed to make an exact replica of the one that was destroyed, and it came to just about $1,000 US, which came to about 25,000 Turkish lira with the exchange rate. Well, she refused, so we took her to court. She pulled all kinds of BS to not pay and delay, but the judge ended up making her pay $1,650 US, plus an order for her to pay any border taxes on the replacement kits alongside the court and lawyer fees. It completely effed her savings, and her husband, who was already waiting for a chance to divorce her, took it. When it all ended up, she had nothing and even lost her brat's custody to her ex-husband. And she not only lost the down payment she had for a house, she lost all her savings and didn't get alimony from her husband. Am I happy her life got completely effed? No, not really. Do I feel sorry it happened? Not in the slightest. She and her crotch goblin effed around and found out. It's that simple. I feel bad for her husband though. He's gonna be the one trying to make that brat into a normal person, and I don't envy it in the slightest. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Kryptonator. It says, "Man, as a gunpla and model kit guy, I respect you so much. Mad props to your mom for helping you there. I hope the kit can be repaired. Much love to you, man." OP responded to this one and said, "I wish. The inner frame is completely effed. I did manage to save the handmade custom sword shield, the thing Red Rider has, but I made it myself to be the size for the O. The custom beam rifle and a few pieces I used for kit bash, but the rest is just plastic dust." We don't hear too much of people holding family responsible for their actions, especially by taking them to court, so this was pretty refreshing. Now, OP did update this story 5 months later, so let's get into that one now. The update is titled, "Aunt broke my model kit, so I took her everything, update." Hey, I'm not sure if this is how updates are done in this subreddit, but the crap storm continued. and some people were asking for updates, so here it goes. Well, the time the judge gave my aunt to pay what she owed me came and went, but she didn't make any payment at all, so we legally had to push the case into legal collectment. Cops went to her house, but she, quote-unquote, wasn't there. She was in her house, but didn't make any noise. So cops had to leave and get a search permit to enter to look for her. They found her inside, having sold her everything, and ready to illegally leave the country to not pay anything and start a new life abroad. When they were apprehending her, she attacked the cops, actually clawed the eye of one, causing permanent damage, and adding multiple charges to her file. She was taken to court again, this time for more crimes alongside not making payment. I'm not sure if I can legally list all the things she was charged with, but in the end, she got 18 years and 9 months jail time, with no chance of parole until the 15th year. And yes, since she had sold her everything to leave the country, the court took the amount she had to pay us, recalculated to today's tax numbers and exchange rates, before putting the rest of the money in an account that her son would get when he is 18. As for her brat in the first post, I had told that when her husband divorced her, he had gotten custody. Well, the kid's personality was so bad, he took him to a psychiatrist, who decided because of my aunt's crappy parenting, he was showing personality issues. He is now in a pre-military boarding school for troubled kids, which he hates completely. As for the money, I would love to say I used it to get the parts necessary to remake that kit, but I had to put it in a saving account. The government recently changed border tax systems, so the previous money became a substantial amount with the new numbers, like hilariously so. As much as I would love to spend it all on Gunpla, I have to think about the future, so it's gonna stay in a savings account, getting fatter by the day until I graduate. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Anon11233455. It says, while it sucks that the model was broken in the first place, I think your grandfather would be proud to know that you put the proceeds from it getting broken into savings. OP responded to this one and said, I hope so. He was a darn genius when it came to money, as he managed to raise 2 children, take care of his and my grandmother's sick parents, and live a good life with just 2 teacher wages of him and my grandma. If I'm half as smart as him when it comes to money, that money I got should last me for a long time. OP, was your aunt trying to speedrun how to ruin her life in under a year? Clawing the cop in the face while being arrested was absolutely stupid. Like, if bad decisions were an Olympic sport, she would have won gold. I totally respect your putting the money away, but I've got to be honest because a custom DO Revenge Edition would be pretty sweet. This story comes to us from Darling Darcy. Got fired, reported them to OSHA, and destroyed a family business and made them leave town. So a while back, I'd been hired to be the marketing person for a family business. It was a fitness equipment liquidator that had been founded by a gold medalist Olympian. He had fallen into some mental health issues and had delegated his wife to take over the business. She didn't have the experience, but took the reins anyway, and she and her children ran the place, albeit with some success. So this is where I come in. The first red flag I should have seen was that she was trying to screw over the recruiter by wanting us to do a side deal to pay me technically less, but still more than I would have gotten without the recruiter as the middle person. But I was in bed and I didn't think too much about it. The next thing was how embedded the family aspect was in this business. That there was basically no distinction between the employees and family affairs being wrapped up in their work environment too. But I was just happy to be finally in a space where I felt welcome and almost love bombed by the CEO, who treated me like one of her own children. Always lots of hugs and even kisses during good morning meetings as if we were coming downstairs for breakfast. Meetings ended up turning into brainstorming sessions because the CEO's children and the workers were so scatterbrained and didn't want to commit to any specific plans of action, and I was basically on my own when it came to any marketing of anything because nobody would actually participate if it came down to it. About a month or so into it, I get ambushed by the CEO and her daughter, who was like the operations person technically or something. Both were wondering why we hadn't achieved as much as I had wanted to, and when I explained that I didn't really receive much help or participation from anyone, suddenly it became all about blaming me for everything wrong, and why sales were down, and why nothing was exponentially growing as she had hoped they would. I explained what actions I had taken, and that I was doing exactly what I said I was going to do. It wasn't my fault nobody wanted to help when they said they would. It didn't matter. They wanted me gone because they expected the moon in 3 weeks' time with zero budget and zero help from anyone else. So I just left. I want to add, I did a lot while there. I automated a lot of their processes that they were doing by hand, set up Salesforce and Slack, as well as setting up and handling Zendesk and a ticketing system, and even automating a lot of POS processes so that from card tapping to accounting, it was all smooth and seamless. And I made tons of things very efficient for them. I improved productivity while there. But none of that mattered, of course. They wanted double the sales from basically social media posting and nothing else. While I was there, I had documented tons of OSHA violations, exposed wires where customers would walk, ADA violations, customer safety violations, forklifts operated with zero certification and no PPE, and having employees standing on top of the forks just to reach the warehouse ceiling, with no safety anything. Structural violations, you name it, they did the landlord special type fix and left things in often worse states than before. I made the call and sent OSHA photos of what I had documented, which I had only documented in the event of needing to use it. Never actually expected it to come to that, but I did. After talking with them, it was explained to me that there was months-long process to get actions to be taken, even with evidence. The penalties for the violations I had evidence for were financially crippling fines that I knew they wouldn't be able to handle. And after a month of checking every now and then, I got confirmation action was taken. Then, a couple months later, I drove past the warehouse and showroom and saw that it was abandoned. Broken letters, overgrown grass in the parking lot, boarded up windows and doors, for lease, all gone and dilapidated. While I was placing those calls, I was also reaching out to my realtor friend who is super good at what she does, saying that we should time it right so after these fines and penalties that she can drop literature off at their door until they're convinced to sell. She didn't do it in time, but she did catch wind that the house had been sold and sold fast. Their website was 404'd and they basically packed their bags and left. I still can't believe it worked, but sometimes in life we have to accept that we are the karma that someone has coming to them. Goodbye, Amy. Wherever you and your family left to, we're even. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Candid Umpire 6418. It says, "Geez, that was nuclear indeed. What an effed up work environment. Both the physical violations, but also the family part. Plus the unrealistic expectations. Nice revenge, sir." OP responded to this one saying she was like a female Andrew Tate, selling these girl boss alpha courses online on her website for her other business, as if the warehouse wasn't the thing keeping everyone's lights on. Literally thought herself this amazing business person when she was really just appointed by a husband who I don't doubt suffered somewhat from her. If that's how I was treated, I can only imagine how a husband who stopped being the breadwinner would get treated behind closed doors. OP in this story did what we always say to do on this channel. Document, document, document. You may not be able to use what you're documenting right away, but when the crap hits the fan, sometimes it'll come in handy. Some family-owned businesses can be great to work for, but the majority of them, well, if you're not part of the family, you're going to be one of the first ones to go. If something goes wrong, you're going to be blamed because you're not family, and they don't have to put up with you once you're gone. This story comes to us from They Call Me Noob XD. Decline to pay me after I help you pass your exam? Have fun getting deported. So this happened a couple years ago during COVID when everything was online. A mutual friend, let's call him D, reached out to me, absolutely desperate. He was on the verge of getting deported because he had already failed his coding exam twice. One more failure, and he wouldn't be able to stay in the country. He knew I was good at coding and begged me to take the exam for him. He told me how his entire future depended on it, how he had no options left, etc. Feeling a bit sorry for him, I agreed, on the condition that he would pay me $500 for doing it. He agreed immediately, so I spent a couple of weeks preparing. The exam was proctored over Zoom, and we set it up so that I could control his computer remotely while he pretended to take the exam himself. We pulled it off without a hitch, and he passed the exam. Afterward, we went out for drinks to celebrate. Each paid their own share because I didn't want him deducting anything from what he owed me. Here's where things went downhill. He gave me $100 up front and promised to pay the remaining $400 in a couple of weeks after he sorted out his graduation stuff. Weeks turned into months, and he kept dodging me with excuses. After 6 months of this, it became clear he wasn't going to pay me back. I gave him multiple warnings to pay me or I'll report him, but he kept taking it lightly and blocked me. I was pissed. I helped him out, and he completely ghosted me after getting what he wanted. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. First, I reported him to his university for academic misconduct. I explained in detail how I was the one who took the exam for him and provided evidence to back it up. They investigated and failed him retroactively, which meant he couldn't graduate. Since his visa was tied to his student status, this basically screwed him over completely. Some context, it was an anonymous tip to the college with a fake email with all the proof. They called him and gave him a chance to retake the exam on the spot, but guy never studied and failed at the most basic stuff. But it didn't end there. He was still living in the country illegally, hoping to somehow fix things. I knew he had no way out, so I anonymously tipped off the authorities, saying there was an illegal immigrant involved in suspicious activity living in my area. They came, found out he was there illegally, and he got deported. Now some mutual friends are saying I went too far, that it was a petty move to ruin his entire life over $400. On one hand, I feel like he deserved it for trying to scam me. I wouldn't have minded if he came clean saying he doesn't have money or financial capacity to pay and he was sorry. I would have let the matters go without a hitch. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Pereira2088. It says, "It's not about the money, it's about sending a message." In the comment section for this one, there were a bunch of people saying that OP went too far, getting the guy deported over $400. Did we forget what subreddit we're in? OP was literally the one person that this guy didn't need to screw over because OP was dictating his fate. That guy is a complete dumbass, and OP did what they needed to do. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.